Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, we're Dead Space Chamber Music from Bristol, UK. We've got 3 or 4 of us here. I'm Ellen, singer.
I'm Tom. I play guitar, and live I use a sampler as well.
And I'm Katie, and I'm drums and various percussion.
And how would you describe the music of Dead Space Chamber Music?
It's an interesting question.
Weird.
Yeah. one that I don't know. It is difficult to answer in terms of straight ahead genre. And if anyone has a listen, I think it's quite quickly apparent that we're drawing on quite a few influences there. There's definitely a weirdness, a strangeness to it, an uncanniness. Maybe we definitely want to aim for something that can feel disorientating or unsettling, but then we like contrasts. So there's definitely melodic material there. There's abstract and there's songs. And we like a very big dynamic range as well, which we think is quite unusual these days. So you get very, very loud bits and very, very soft and subtle bits where you are very much invited to lean in. So I'd say it's a music of contrasts that definitely draws on quite a wide range of influences from, early music, so medieval Renaissance material, to things like doom or old folk or all sorts.
I'd say there's probably like a dark ambient element to it, maybe a bit of an avant-garde experimental element as well. Yeah, and then like as Ellen said, more conventional like song based elements as well, which those tend to come from our reworking of early music material, so stuff from medieval and Renaissance period, and then some stuff that might sound a bit more like doom Black Sabbath kind of
heavy
kind of elements. Yeah. So it can be pretty tricky tying all of that together, but I guess somehow we make it work, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we always, that's what we think about it in the practice room, isn't it? Like we always know when we're trying something, it's like, that's us.
It hits that spot.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah, that's us. And so it's hard to define exactly what that is, but we know.
Yeah.
And we're quite excited to present something quite varied to people.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we sort of intentionally have a list of different things that we try and combine. I suppose there's just certain things that we're interested in musically, and then we, when we practice, when we rehearse, that kind of thing, we just,
it's intuitive.
Yeah, we just kind of
Yeah.
see if we can combine that stuff, and when it's working, there's an instinctive understanding that it's, if it works or it isn't working, I guess.
So beyond genres and those kind of classifications, you mentioned weird and you mentioned heavy. Would you say there's certain moods that your music encompasses?
Yeah. Not always an easy one to answer.
For me personally, like a lot of the song elements, as I say, are often reworkings of older material, traditional material, early music material. There's often, I would say, a definite melancholic streak. I think we all chime with that. It's quite an unspoken thing. I mean, Bird on a Briar, for example, it's quite a forlorn love song. It's the earliest English love song recorded and documented, and it's quite forlorn. But then it has like a lot of early stuff, it moves between minor and major. So it has that emotional complexity of, it is melancholy, it is yearning, but there's these moments of brightness in amongst it. And Flow My Tears is like that as well.
Yeah, there's parts that you could say there's an uplifting atmosphere to it amongst the melancholy. Yeah. So the early music stuff tends to
shift,
kind of walk the line between those two things, I guess.
It's always interesting to explore that sort of thing. Any other moods we can think of? I think a drive, especially because since Katie joined, oh my God, a couple of years ago now, time flies. It's before that there was myself, Tom, and Liz Paxton, who's cello. We were a trio at first, and then Katie joined with the drums and the very various percussion, and it enabled us to explore something we'd started exploring, like on Divaria, for example. We'd use like a programmed beat for that, but as soon as we had a live drummer, we could explore further that, medieval dance music angle of a drive. I mean, how does that feel to you, Katie, to kind of be doing that? Because it isn't it gives us extra intensity, doesn't it?
The engine room.
Yeah, I feel like, particularly based on a lot of the stuff that I applied to the music, it's kind of a heartbeat that goes through the music.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I feel like it adds a bit of a sense of dread and building tension.
Dread and tension, I think that's fair.
Dread and tension. So there's a couple of other moods you can put us under.
Sure,
definitely.
Sorry, Ellen, did you use the phrase medieval dance music?
Yeah.
Some of the
because
a
lot of them are dances.
Dances,
they are actually come from dances, and especially the secular ones. We do sacred and secular material, but especially the secular ones that are put to dance rhythms. Like, for example, we're working on a new piece at the moment that incorporates a pavan, which is a kind of steps. How does it go? It goes. So just something like that, but just having that.
Dance,
it's like a formal step that people used to do. So I love that idea of medieval dance music, because that's exactly what it was.
Well, I mean, you guys can call your music whatever you want, but this podcast is definitely getting classified medieval dance music.
Wonderful.
So let's talk about the history of the band. Well, I should also mention, a good deal of your recorded output is improvised as well, right? Including your studio output?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we'll get deeper into that when we talk about your songwriting. Before we get there, though, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you guys together and what led you to decide to create and record this early European music, medieval style experimental band?
Well, what brought us together? We started off as a duo. It was myself and Tom, and we shared an interest in early music. And also, I think you'd been we'd both actually been studying or learning about jazz, but also, traditional music, all sorts, really. So it from the first sort of incarnation, it had that potential for those ingredients. And then we were taking part in a very, very small sort of DIY underground festival here in Bristol. And one of the organisers was Liz, cellist. And we'd had in mind that we'd love to experiment with a cellist. And so she sort of was a guest on our slot, and that was it. We after a few more gigs, we plucked up the courage. It was slightly like a wedding proposal. We were like, oh gosh, should we ask her tonight? And her family were in the audience as well. Anyway, so and from there we just grew and grew. And she actually studied music composition for film, so she's super confident with very experimental improvisation, and to me it was really new, and I was pretty trepidatious, and at first the way I got over it was listening to what she was doing and trying to sing it back, trying to copy it, and just learning learning that way, and then you find your own way and everything. So I guess our music from the trio period, as I say, we did bring in one or two rhythmic pieces, but it was mainly sort of a longer form, quite ethereal, but the same combination of things, of songs and semi-improvised material. Because even the improvised material, it's structured. There's consistent elements which identify it as a piece. And we all have elements that we use and bring to it. And then, as I say, just actually not long before lockdown, was it?
Yeah.
I think we'd done one gig with you as a 4-piece, Katie, and then that was it. Lockdown happened. So working on this album, it was really how we found that, we expanded in that way. And under those extremely intense situation, of course, like everybody had, I mean, we're lucky here in that we have a local place where we can rehearse. And of course, at first in the deep lockdown, we couldn't go there. But then as soon as we could, we actually had this time to work on stuff quite intensively. We did a fair few live streams in lockdown. We also created tracks for collaborative various artist releases, for example, from Eighth Tower in Italy, things like that. So, and I think all of us, it's no coincidence that we all kept working through lockdown. And I think that that applied to our music. And for me, leaning into our processes, even when we couldn't see each other and we had to send each other things, I think I don't know what I'd have done without our music really through that whole time. So the concept of the Black Hours, this medieval manuscript, and being inspired by this idea that there's this book, this devotional book, this beautiful prayer book that's handmade on black vellum that takes you through the night in prayer, basically on certain hours. That idea of the sort of ritual of it and that already was there. And then lockdown happened and it just felt even more potent, like, wow, yeah, these are the Black Hours we're suddenly plunged in. And this is the form that our getting through this night is going to take. And it had a sort of structure to it, didn't it? And I think,
well, that's what the, being able to create music, whether we were separately collaborating by recording pieces and then sending it over the internet each other before we could actually meet in person, that really kind of showed how that's what got us through the pandemic and through isolation and everything.
And then we had the very surreal experience of going into the studio, wasn't it, in summer 2020, when it was all still going off, obviously, and it was boiling hot, the height of summer, and it was just so surreal, wasn't it? But very, very intense.
We'll get back to the writing and recording of the new album in a little bit. I'd like to circle back to the early years. When the original 3 members first got together, what year would that have been?
That would have been 2016, I think.
It was a bit before that, 2015, I'd say. Yeah.
And how fixed of an idea did you have of the kind of music that you wanted to make?
I wouldn't say it was too fixed or too detailed. I think there was some basic ideas in place that gave a direction in which to go, and then the details, the finer details, have become clear along the way, I would say. I suppose really it was how I remember it would be two main elements. One was reinterpreting early music, and that's where the more conventional or fixed song forms came into it. And then the other element was developing stuff through improvisation. So composing stuff through free improvisation, recording it, and then developing the ideas that worked. So the improvised stuff, they're all, anything that we do that's improvised, each thing is its own identifiable piece, but they never sound the same way twice because of the improvisatory element that's going on. So I guess really it was those two main things kind of gave a direction.
I mean, the historical performance of early music it's a whole area, a very specialist area that's very well represented in several countries or across the world, actually, and we love it. But what we're trying to do is something a bit different. The way I think about it is we're taking material that's hundreds of years old, but we're not we're performing it like a living, breathing thing, like a visceral thing, like it's here. And the way I think about it, and I've spoken about it before, is like, it's a song that can make you dance it made someone dance hundreds of years ago, and it can make someone dance now. It made someone cry hundreds of years ago, and it can make someone cry now. And it's that idea of inhabiting this stuff that's handed on, but not pretending to be in the past, very much interpreting it
it's
our
not
way.
A flat replication.
No. And so it actually opens up a lot of creativity, because we're never, like I think we said it lately, didn't we? We're never faced with a blank sheet. You don't get that sort of frightening, like, oh God, what we do,
Yeah, there's a basic tune, and a structure and a form, but that's all there is. It's just a basic blueprint, and then
there's enough
you can
for
build on that however you want. You can take it wherever you want. Yeah,
to experiment with and approach experimentally as well. Yeah. So that's, I'd say, from the early days, that those kind of ideas were definitely there. Like,
that's what gave a direction to go in, I think.
The very first song we did was Flow My Tears, which is on our first album. And we were like, oh, what, that's by John Dowland, who's a Renaissance composer from England. And it's usually performed with a lute accompaniment. Very beautiful song. And so we thought, oh, how about putting, how about doing the first section as Colla Voce, how and stuff like that. And the harmony part is now played by the cello and so on. And in fact, that's a song we're working on again now, and we're going to work in this Pavan beat that I was talking about. So that's another thing is that as time goes on, we can rework our own reworkings as well, which we like. But yeah, basically those elements were there from the start, and having a second and a third and fourth person join, it's just made it, like, the scope of how that can be done and the layers of complexity that we can achieve. It's just, made it richer and richer, basically. Yeah.
And where does this interest in early music come from?
I don't know. Just always loved it. I don't know. It's just, it's around here. Like, I think, like there's, I mean, you kind of hear a lot of folk music, traditional music when you're growing up. Early music is one of those things that you'll come across it at some point, like some Gregorian chant or something like that, and you're just like, whoa, what's that? And we actually, me and Tom first met when we were going to night classes to learn about this stuff, and that's sort of how we met. So it's just an exploration of those things. Yeah. I think it's very visceral. Well, I think it sort of grabs you, doesn't it? When you start hearing it, you're just like, whoa,
it's like a curiosity of the kind of origins of a lot of music.
Yes, that's right.
How that's developed and how it presents now.
Yeah.
It's really nice to kind of look back at those early pieces, and the stuff that we do. It is kind of, look, this works. It still works,
and it is the roots of Western music. Yeah,
stuff that's incredibly old, but you can still there's still ways in which you relate to it now quite easily, and notice similarities between that kind of music and stuff that's around now. I guess as well, there's something, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but like timeless stuff, like maybe something like a bit like an archetype about it, like how there are certain kinds of stories, and God knows how old those stories are, but you still get those stories still show up in like Hollywood films or whatever. They've kind of always been around. So there's something fundamental there that's somehow timeless. So melodies that worked really well 800 years ago, they could be similar to tunes or riffs that people would come up with today, just because there is the core of them. There's something that's
just resonates with people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just fundamentally human about them.
Stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Well, specific to medieval music and early European music, is this something that culturally you're exposed to a lot growing up in your part of England?
Well, I actually wasn't really exposed to it growing up.
You weren't so much, but I grew up in Wales and Katie grew up in Cornwall, and And yeah, I would say I was very exposed personally. There's a lot of traditional music around, a lot of instruments around all the time, but also Methodism was really common. So you'd have the Methodist hymns that we were singing in both languages, English and Welsh. And those hymns are strong. I mean, wow, fire and brimstone, So the combination of all that, was very influential to myself. And then
and then in the part of Cornwall where I'm from, we have this May Day celebration on the 1st of May every year, and it's very much a kind of leftover pagan tradition where you're singing goodbye to the spring and you're welcoming in the summer, and it's very, it's based on a very kind of emotive kind of, there's a strong song that goes with it. There's drums that you wear around your waist that they drum right to the core of you. There's accordion music that goes along with it, and the lyrics are, they're super, super old. The tune is, there's no real steadfast kind of fact on this is where it came from, but there's a lot of, speculation on, and this is where it developed from. But it's the kind of music that you hear it and you feel it in every part of your body, and you have to be part of it. You need to be, and everybody's singing. Every single person around you is singing along to this chorus, and it really fills you. It really fills you. And I think that's probably where my kind of real love of music, playing stuff, and particularly the beats, I think that's where it comes from. Because, that's, you go out, you join in with that from, the day you're born, really.
That's in the DNA,
yeah.